Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Anna. I am a portrait photographer in the Chicagoland area, and today we are going to do a Doctor Who inspired cosplay. This is the building that we're going to be using today. Christopher, the model, actually mentioned this would be a great location simply because it has a lot of architecture and styles related to the show. So once we're going to take a couple photos, it's time to open up Photoshop and begin editing. This is the image that we're working with today. What I'm going to do is sky replacement. Photoshop has this awesome tool where it will detect where the sky is and then replace it with whatever image you import. I imported this galaxy photo that I think looked amazing and would fit this photo shoot. So I did some minor adjustments onto the image and then selected OK. I didn't really like the positioning of the photo, so I clicked the galaxy layer, hit Command T for transform, and placed the image in where I thought it would look best. I didn't like having all those layers on the image, so I went ahead and collapsed that folder. We're going to add a lens flare, so add a new layer of a solid color, select black so that way it's more noticeable, and reduce the opacity so we could see the layers underneath. So once we have that done, convert this to a smart object because we are going to be moving that lens flare around, and find render and lens flare. I personally like the 100mm lens. I think that works best, and reduce the brightness since we want it over the wand. We don't want it too bright so we don't cover Christopher's face. You're going to have to move this a couple times around and probably even reduce the brightness so that way we can see what we're working on. Once we finish that, you're going to double click on that layer and make sure that we bring back the fill to 100% and save that. Any saves that we're going to do on that specific layer means that it's going to go back to our original photo. So once we click back to the original photo, we're going to go to our blending modes and select whichever blending mode looks best. I think this one looks really good, and I feel like it works best for this image and doesn't cover Christopher's face. We're going to reduce the opacity just a little bit because we want to make sure that we can include a lightning bolt in there. What you're going to do is find a PNG of a lightning bolt and then place it where you think it would look best. Also select a blending mode because the one that I found was blue and I wanted it to be white. To make sure it doesn't cover Christopher's face, you're going to select the lasso tool and draw over it and then do a mask. And any other adjustments that you want to include, you can double click on that layer and this editing panel will show up so that way you can do any drop shadows or any glosses that you would like or you think would fit. This is going to be the hard part of the image. What we're going to do is insert a TARDIS here, and you're going to notice that the angle and the perspective is not the same thing as everything else in this photo. So the first thing that we're going to do is scale this down and bring it to the bottom right corner. I feel like it looks more appropriate there and also doesn't bring too much attention to it because we want to make sure that Christopher is the focal point of this image. From there, you're going to go to filter and perspective warp, and you're going to make sure that you are doing 4 points on the right hand side and 4 points on the left hand side because each side of this TARDIS is pointing in a different direction. So make sure that you're on the layout, and then you are going to drag over those 4 corners and do something that's close enough to those corners to make sure that the edges are still straight, and you can also connect these to make sure that those are completely a full object. Now that we have the object selected, feel free to just change the perspective and hit warp. You notice that the building behind you is coming from the top left corner to the bottom right corner, so just make sure that your TARDIS also replicates that same type of perspective. From there, you can adjust it around. I would not recommend to scale it up because then all of your adjustments will be replaced. You're going to add a brush and a new layer because you're going to be drawing in some shadows. Make sure that it's underneath the TARDIS so that way it looks a little bit more believable, and changing the opacity will also make it look a little bit more realistic. So from there, just drag it down and make sure that everything looks appropriate. You can also add a dust PNG because I feel like that's going to help hide the shadows as well as the perspective. Change the screen or the blending tool to something that is a little bit more to your liking, and you can stretch out the PNG by hitting shift and using any of those markers. Once we have that finished, I didn't like some of the lens flare that was coming in, so I grabbed the lasso tool and drew around it and then hit layer mask so that way we can get rid of that. We want to make sure that this photo stays cohesive with the colors, so with each layer, go ahead and do hue saturation and reduce it down, so that way we can make sure that everything is in a grayscale. From there, you're going to do a new layer of a solid color and pick whichever color you feel like would work appropriate for this image. I picked blue. I think it would look best with the galaxy and everything else surrounding it. You're also going to pick a blending mode that would look best and most fitting for this image. So once you have that selected, you can again replace any of the colors that you want to something that you think looks better. And also, I personally didn't like the way that the hue saturation looked on Christopher's layer, so I double clicked on that and brought some of those colors back in to make it a little bit less washed out. The last step that we're going to do is add a background blur. So if you go into the channels and hit Command G, you are adding a new layer, which is an alpha layer. Do a gradient, and then I picked radial because I want something to be something surrounding Christopher's background. Once we're there, go ahead and click the RGB and do blur and lens blur. This one is going to select the blur that they think looks best. If you hit the source to alpha 1, it's going to use that gradient and sort of replicate a camera lens. So from there, you can just keep the adjustments as you want, or you can tweak them and feel like something is a little bit more appropriate. If you set the focal point like Christopher, it'll automatically set it to that, and you can click OK and it will adjust the setting. So that's going to be the final result, and this is the image. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. One tip that I have for you, especially with a fantasy shoot like this, is motion in your image is going to make or break the photo. So when you're doing an image like this, or when you're doing a concept, I would recommend to try to get as much movement in the clothes, in the actor, or in the material as much as possible. So any sort of location that I tried to find in this area, I wanted to find Christopher either falling or running or doing something that allows some movement. Especially with the scarf too, I wanted to make sure that it flew in the wind, so that way we can kind of show this mystical effect. But that is the end of this video. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification button to get notified every single time I post a new video. If you like other videos like this, I will have a playlist created that is located up here, as well as in the description box below. But that is all that I have for you guys. I hope you guys are staying safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.